the Supreme Court, and a North Dakota truck stop deal another blow to the administrative state. That and more coming up in Business Matters. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Paul Graney, standing in for Don Ma today. Great to have you here. We're going to take a look at the markets real quick before we get into the news. S&P 500 up by about 0.3% today. Dow Jones up, 0.1%. And the Nasdaq been a big winner for the day, up 0.9%, give or take. And sometimes something that seems insignificant can turn out to be very significant. When a North Dakota truck stop set out on a mission to save, 10 cents or so every time a customer used a debit card at its store, it probably didn't expect to become part of potentially one of the most significant governmental changes this century. We had the Chevron decision last Friday, which curbed the power of American federal agencies. Big news. But today, the Supreme Court made it even easier for American businesses to challenge federal regulations. And this isn't just big news for the penny-pinching truck stop corner post. It means an entire raft of years-old or decades-old regulations could now be successfully challenged and overturned in court. Before corner post, if a regulation had been around for more than 6 years, it was pretty much untouchable. A lower court threw out the corner post case because it said it fell outside the 6-year statute of limitations. The court basically said, "You're too late, corner post, tough luck." But corner post said, "We're not too late, because our business wasn't even around back then." And today, the Supreme Court agreed. So from now on, the 6-year countdown will only begin from the moment the business is first affected by the regulation, not when the regulation is first introduced. And joining us now, we have Spike Cohen, founder and president of You Are the Power. Spike, how are you?
I'm doing great, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Good to see you. Now, Spike, to give us some insight into this, can you give us some other, say, hypothetical examples of how this might start playing out in the real world?
Oh, I can give many hypothetical examples. So for the past 40 years, the courts have been ruling, thanks to Chevron deference, they've been ruling that anytime someone was suing a regulatory agency saying that that harm was being done and that the regulatory agency was operating outside of its mandate by law, they just deferred to the so-called experts in that agency. So for at least the last 40 years, there are many cases that have been dismissed because they would just defer to those agencies. Now, with the end of that deference, with the Loper-Bright decision on Friday, and now saying that they can't just go back 6 years, they can go back as far as they need to, as long as the damages are within the last 6 years. We could see an undoing of this zombie administrative state for at least during my lifetime of the past 40 plus years, and possibly going back a century or more.
What are we talking here? I have a feeling that this is something that may benefit smaller businesses even more than bigger businesses.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Chevron deference and this sort of overall deferring to the agencies has led to the regulatory capture by larger companies. If you're a major multi-billion or multi-trillion-dollar company and you realize that the regulatory agency that's regulating your industry has basically unchecked authority, well, now it's incumbent upon you to take over that agency. And so that's what we've seen. We've seen that, big pharma and big ag and big tech and big everything else take over these agencies and use them not just to make themselves richer, but to stifle their smaller competition. This inverts all of that.
And we've seen these federal agencies grow significantly, to say the least, since this Chevron deference. They're quite the powerful entity. Will they have some way to try and guard against this kind of defanging, for want of a better phrase?
Well, they'll have to show that they were operating within the law. They can no longer just say, oh, well, our experts determined that this was our interpretation. And even if that interpretation makes no sense whatsoever, the courts have to, by statute, by the deference that had come before that, they have to just defer to it. That all ends. So, yeah, they can fight back, but they have to actually show that they've been operating within the law. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing for all of us.
I remember a while back I spoke with, I believe he was a state congressman, and he was talking about this Chevron deference and the kind of effect of it. And he said that because of it, not only did it give all this power to the federal agencies, but it also meant congressmen and senators, they didn't really have so much to do anymore. Like, do you feel that now that they have to actually take an interest and start making rules again and regulations, will we start electing different types of people to Congress?
Will necessarily have to, and regardless of who we elect, they're going to have to actually do their job for the first time in several decades. Since basically the 1980s, maybe even before that, Congress people have been kind of political celebrities and social media influencers. The laws are written by lobbyists. They're very broad. They're not extremely well thought out. They basically just create a new regulatory authority, and then with the assumption that they're just going to be able to interpret it and create the rest of the law out of whole cloth, creating basically a fourth branch of government that had no check and balance against it. The end of Chevron deference ends that fourth branch of government, and today's decision with Corner Post says that they can go back retroactively and begin dismantling this zombie administrative state.
And finally, Spike, how long before you start seeing this actually take effect?
I think you're going to see the lawsuits immediately. We saw with the Bruin decision where they went back and said that any gun control act that doesn't comply with the Second Amendment is null and void. We're still seeing that play out in the courts. It could take years. It could, this wasn't Chevron deference wasn't built in a day, and it may not, and it certainly won't be undone in a day. But I think that we're certainly in the right direction. I think the lawsuits are going to begin pretty much immediately, but it may take many years to come to truly see the dismantling we want to see. But it will begin.
Spike Cohen, founder and president of You Are the Power. Appreciate it, Spike. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, Boeing in the news again. The plane makers agreed to buy one of its suppliers, Spirit Aerosystems, for the equivalent of $8.3 billion. Cool figure. Boeing says the deal will help improve the quality and safety of its planes after a series of safety-related incidents. Merger talks reportedly began soon after a mid-air door blowout on a Boeing 737 MAX. Spirit was the company which removed the door panel but failed to properly inform the other teams that the bolts were missing. Investigators said this was the reason the door plug fell off. A Spirit whistleblower who worked on the manufacturing line later said that he was not surprised to hear about the mid-air blowout, as quality control at Spirit is terrible. In the past few months, a number of whistleblowers from Boeing and Spirit have come out voicing safety concerns. Two of them died shortly after. In other Boeing news today, the DOJ is now offering the plane maker a plea deal to resolve a criminal charge over two fatal 737 MAX crashes. Also, Boeing is resuming plane deliveries to China after China suspended most shipments of Boeing planes back in 2019 after crashes. The Better Business Bureau is informing the public about utilities fraudsters. Beware, scammers are impersonating water, electric, gas companies. Anthony Sean Marshall has more.
Utility scammers are taking advantage of times of extreme weather to exploit potential victims. The Better Business Bureau is warning people to stay alert. Here's how the scam typically goes. Utility company imposters will contact customers with a phone call, text, or knock on the door. They claim to be a representative from the local weather, electric, or gas company. A very common scenario is that they will claim a utilities payment is overdue, and the utility will shut off within the hour if the bill is not paid immediately. Here's David Shammy, managing partner with Consumer Attorneys.
If you've been victim of a scam like this, you want to contact a lawyer right away. The Electronic Funds Transfer Act, so if you've transferred money to a criminal, the EFTA is subject to a 1-year statute of limitations. So in the event that there's an opportunity to get your money back from the financial institution, whether it's a bank or credit card company or your checking or savings account, you want a lawyer to help you with that as quickly as possible to put them on notice.
Scammers may also try to enter a home to do repairs or energy audits, often looking for items or personal information to steal. Fraudsters may also promise energy discounts when looking for your personal information or account details. Shammy also says it's important to contact a lawyer so you understand what your rights are.
Because if you choose to not pay a bill or not pay your credit card payment because it was a scam, then you might end up with negative information on your credit report, which could ultimately hurt your credit score. I don't think there's really any real criminal liability that the victim is going to be worried about, but there might be consequences to your credit.
Here's some red flags to watch out for. One is if a caller specifically asks for payment by prepaid debit card, gift card, digital wallet app, or wire transfer instead of a common check or credit card. Another red flag is pressuring you to pay immediately. At any time, if you feel pressured for immediate action by an unknown caller, hang up the phone and call the customer service number listed on your actual utility bill. And of course, never allow anyone into your home unless you have scheduled an appointment or reported a problem. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
And a table for one, please, for American Express. The credit card company today announcing it's buying reservation app Tock for $400 million. Tock is a booking app for around 7,000 restaurants, bars, and other venues. You might know American Express already owns Resy, a rival booking app. On that app, you can get its customers' special table access. Check it out. Not as many people will be firing up the grill this 4th of July holiday. The grill business saw huge sales during the pandemic, but inflated meat prices are now making consumers think twice. People are still grilling, don't worry. They're just not buying new grills. According to one trade group, 80% of U.S. homeowners owned a grill or smoker in 2023. That's up from 64% in 2019. Experts say those grills will reach the end of their life cycle in 2025, and sales should then pick up once again. And BookToop, not to be confused with American Express's new Talk app, has become a huge marketing platform on TikTok. It's now propelling unknown authors to stardom as viral videos on books get billions of views. Here's the story.
BookTok, an online community of book lovers on TikTok, has become a valuable marketing platform, allowing authors like Rebecca Yarros, Sarah Maas, and Colleen Hoover to develop massive fan bases.
I found it's great for building connections, promoting books, short stories, cover reveals, that kind of thing.
E.L. Johnson is a best-selling historical mystery author. She makes videos on TikTok, adding the BookTok hashtag to make her videos show up in that community.
I'll do little videos and be like, look at my book, isn't it amazing? That kind of thing. Or, I'll do cover reveals. I'll say, hey, I've been to a book fair and these are the 5 blue books I've come away with because aren't they beautiful?
Bookstores have special sections based on BookTok. The hashtag BookTok has over 34 million posts on TikTok.
BookTok posts have received hundreds of billions of impressions, and so it's pretty significant.
Saul Nassisi is the founder of Booksy, a publishing site. He says it's hard to write a book, but even harder to promote it. He says BookTok, in combination with the TikTok algorithm, helps a lot.
BookTok started really kind of heavily into the fantasy genre, and now it's heavy on romance. The demographic tends to be younger. So those types of books will start off with an advantage.
Nassisi says to be successful, it also helps to connect with influencers. For people with large followings to post a video on your book. E.L. Johnson says she has no idea why some videos get more views than others.
I will put a video on TikTok and use the BookTok hashtag, and it might get 200 views, and it might get a few comments, and then I'll do a little TikTok about my books while on the train ride home from London. And then that will get 700 views. And I will have no idea why.
In addition to TikTok, Johnson is also on other social media platforms like Facebook, X, and Instagram. She says that gives her a complete package and that promoting a book is about doing what works best for you.
And coming up, is Europe making a right turn? What does it mean for its stalling economy? And is China about to dominate the rare earth metal space even more? We have details on the Communist Party's new rules. That and more coming up in just a moment. And the results are in from the first round of France's election. And the winners are French stocks and the euro. The index that tracks the 40 biggest companies listed in Paris rose. The euro briefly touched the highest level against the dollar in more than 2 weeks. Marine Le Pen's right-wing National Party led the first round, while Emmanuel Macron's alliance slumped to third. So joining us now from Europe is Daniel Lacaille, chief economist at Tresses Hedge Fund, also the author of Escape the Central Bank Trap. Daniel, a lot happening in Europe. It's great to speak to you about it. What do you see as the single biggest change coming economically for Europe if things do start shifting to the right?
I think that the biggest change will be a big shift in environmental policies, in immigration policies, and in trade and industrial policies. So quite a significant change relative to what has been the status quo in the last particularly 8 years. The French radical left and the French radical right and the Italian right are both showing the discontent of citizens with an agricultural, farming, industrial policy that has led the economy to stagnation and agriculture and farming to lose a lot of power in terms of the economy. No? And the challenges of immigration are also very relevant.
Why now, though, Daniel? Because you and I have talked about these problems in Europe, economic problems, etc., for many years now. Why are things starting to come to the surface right now?
I think, to be fairly honest, the big problem has been the inflation burst. For a very significant number of years, it seemed that citizens in the euro area in particular seemed to be okay, or at least accepting the wrong policies, because inflationary pressures were very little, if existent at all. No? I think that the big problem has been that citizens all over Europe have lost a massive amount of purchasing power. They've lost they've lost in terms of real wages, and they've lost in terms of ability to make ends meet. So inflation added to higher taxes have basically created the last drop that has made the dam basically burst.
And what do you think, what is the first policy implementation or the first policy choice that these governments bring in to help bring down inflation? And is it too late, considering all of the government spending, etc., that we've seen over the past few years?
I think it's going to be challenging, because inflation at the end of the day, as you know, is a monetary phenomenon. So if they continue to spend way above revenues, and if they continue to deficit spend and the ECB continues to monetize it, inflation will remain persistent. But I think that at least what they're trying to do is to reduce the discontent by eliminating some of the most harmful policies in terms of immigration, in terms of agriculture, farming, and industry. And that at least could bring a little bit of growth. So maybe not on the inflation front, but certainly on the growth front.
Now, Daniel, very quickly explain to us here in the States, how much power do these national governments have when it comes to implementing economic policy versus, like you said, the ECB, the European Parliament, and the European Commission?
Relatively small, but not inexistent. If you think about it, the two radical right parties in the European Parliament, if they got together, would be the largest party, you know, that they get together in different ideological and social groups. So they could actually exert a lot of influence on the European Commission and on the European Union policies. Certainly in the case of energy policy, and probably as well in the case of the Agenda 2030 policy, at least to put brakes on the most damaging elements of those legal and regulatory burdens.
Let's wait and see. Daniel Lacaille, Chief Economist at the Tresses Hedge Fund. Daniel, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And work at a Samsung electronics plant in South Korea could come to a halt next week. The National Samsung Electronics Union said it would launch a general strike on July 8th unless its demands are met. Workers are asking the company to commit to improvements in performance-based bonuses and an extra annual day of leave. The union represents roughly 28,000 employees, a lot of people, more than 1/5 of Samsung's workforce. Samsung, of course, is the top smartphone maker, but also a memory chip maker. Any large-scale disruption could drag it down in the race to make high-bandwidth memory chips for artificial intelligence applications. And now Meta's pay or consent model may cost them a massive fine. Meta launched a no-ad subscription service for Facebook and Instagram in Europe last year. Under it, users may consent to being tracked to get free service, which will be funded by advertising revenue, a lot like we have here on Facebook. But they could also pay for ad-free service. The European Union regulators say that this binary choice breached its Digital Markets Act, though Meta said its model complied with the Digital Markets Act, and it looks forward to more constructive dialogue with the European Commission. And China's manufacturing sectors continue to see an uneasy recovery, according to latest data. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics revealed that manufacturing activity was in a second consecutive month of contraction. A senior statistician at the Bureau said in a statement that the market demand for the manufacturing industry was still insufficient. The weak figures may suggest more state support is needed, but high local government debt and deflationary pressure cast a long shadow over recovery prospects. Meanwhile, the property slump and weak domestic demand remain some of China's biggest challenges. And China's unveiled a list of rare earth regulations in the name of, quote, protecting national security. The critical materials make products for electric vehicles, consumer electronics, warfare, and more. Officials said it will set up a traceability system to track the mining, smelting, and separation and export of the rare earth products. The new regulations will take effect on October 1st. In recent years, China has become the world's dominant producer of a group of 17 minerals and accounts for nearly 90% of global refined output. Dependence. Pure joy for Pixar. Disney said that its Inside Out sequel has surpassed the $1 billion mark at the worldwide box office. Comes less than 3 weeks after its release. Disney is Pixar's parent company, and it says that the Inside Out 2 is the highest grossing movie of the year and the only one to cross the $1 billion mark. This is the sequel to the 2015 hit about the inner emotions of a young girl. The original Inside Out opened to about $90 million in its first weekend and topped out around $860 million globally. And that's all the stories we have for you today. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any feedback for the episode, feel free to let me know. You can email us at business@ntd.com. I do read them, don't forget. Business matters. Goodbye.